job's a joke, you broke. Your love life's DOA. It's like you're always stuck in second gear. When it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your year. But I'll be there for you. When the rain starts to fall, I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you. 'Cause you're there for me too.
Welcome back to week 3 from Shouting from the Couch. We were off last week. Tyler and I were out of town, but we're back this week. It's week 1 of the NFL.
Apparently, I'm not important enough to know that I was out of town as well. That's fine.
Okay.
Please.
I was just some random
out of
guy
town.
too. I'm just some random
And
guy too.
we got a visitor.
Tyler, your hair.
Everything's
Sure.
different. It's a lot more like smooth.
Yeah.
A lot more flowy.
Yeah.
Character, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah. I'm Mitchell Summers. I hang out with these guys from time to time. These jokesters. I'm a senior here at Mizzou.
That was
And yeah.
What are your interests? Long walks on the beach?
Long walks on the beach. Those are nice. Warm hugs. Those are good too.
Well, you're a Cornhuskers fan.
Well, that is true. That is true. I'm wearing my Team Art jersey today. Favorite Cornhusker player ever.
Jacob didn't get the memo that we were wearing jerseys today, and so
I also didn't want to really wear my Bears jersey
Went with the
after
Bears jersey.
the result today,
Third greatest
so.
Mizzou tight end, Chase Kaufman here.
Nonetheless, we're going to talk about NFL this week, probably not so much NCAA. And we're going to start it off with the biggest surprise from week 1, guys. What are we thinking?
I'm going with Carson Wentz. He looked like the real deal today. I didn't expect him to be, that good that quickly. He was 22 for 37, 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. I expect him to be like, around an average quarterback overall eventually, but he was above average today, and the Eagles got the win. So.
Very impressed by Carson Wentz. I mean, he had a lot to work with, especially, obviously it's the Browns. A lot of people could do well against the Browns. A lot of people playing on Stankowski could at least keep it close with the Browns for a bit. Biggest surprise for me is it was a very disappointing showing from the Bills. I mean, against the Ravens, Joe Flacco coming back from an ACL injury. Did not see a lot from Tyrod Taylor. I mean, he had his moments, but as a whole, the Bills looked terrible.
The Bills still have like a really talented team around them. The receivers, like Sammy Watkins, a very big fan of Sammy Watkins. Probably the 3rd or 4th best receiver out of that draft class of insane talent out wide. And Robert Woods is a very solid number 2. And their backfield.
Charles Clay, a very good tight end too.
Yeah, Charles Clay, another solid tight end. Their offensive line is really talented. I'm not sure exactly why that they came up so flat against a very below average Ravens team.
Joe Flacco is elite, keep in mind.
We've already checked that out. That is not, in fact, a gang. Rashad Perriman, I will say I was impressed. We saw one play. Rashad Perriman play looked very good. So that's good to see him back fully healthy. Ravens, it was 13-7. You can't take a lot from a game where it's combined 20 points.
And I'm going to go with the Jaguars. I know that's a little bit of a homer pick, but against the Packers, they almost beat the Packers.
They look very good.
So they look better than I
solid.
expected them to be this year. They got some new pieces, some guys coming back. So.
Especially out of the gate, for them to mesh that quickly with a bunch of new guys on defense was pretty impressive.
If their defense could be somewhat better than what they were last year, they were one of the worst defenses all in the NFL last year. So if they could find some semblance, maybe that's what Jalen Ramsey's going to bring in. And the linebacker out of UCLA, I forget his name.
Miles Jack.
If he can come in and be healthy, that knee's not going to impair him. And Dante Fowler, that's another guy. They had pretty much 3 first-rounders, 3 honestly top 10 talents.
And then I can't believe you haven't mentioned it. They went and go out and signed a Nebraska great, Prince Amukamara.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true.
So there's a lot of young talent on that defense.
And
Malik Jackson. So there's a lot of young talent on that defense. I feel like, personally, I still feel like they're a year away.
Yeah.
Because, although the Colts are currently losing to the Lions, so the South might be just open as all hell right now. So, the Jaguars have a chance. If they made a wild card, I would not blink.
Biggest surprises? How about biggest disappointments?
I'm not getting my surprise. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to get my surprise anyway.
Go ahead.
Okay, first off,
I already said I'm low on the rung. I got to build my way up. I got to shout.
Biggest disappointment, Mitchell. Week 1.
My biggest. I was gonna get my surprise. I'm sorry. My surprise is Trevor Siemian.
Okay.
For
Broncos. I forgot about Thursday night game. Right.
He looked rattled early on, but he really settled in.
Yeah, around the end of it, I really liked how decisive he was in the second half of the game. Those 2 interceptions. One of them was he had pressure in his face.
Yeah. I didn't blame him for the first one.
No, I thought he was a really, not necessarily talented isn't the word I would give for him. I liked how decisive he wouldn't sit back there too long with the ball in his hands, and he would, if he needed to run to pick up the yardage, that's what he had to do. But I guess if you want to go on to my biggest disappointment, kind of from the same game, Cam Newton still has the shades of Von Miller in his nightmare. Cam Newton came to this game, I think he was 18 for 33 passing, and really did not look too solid to close out that game, where there was kind of a switch. Trevor Siemian kind of started rising up, and Cam Newton started really faltering. I'm not sure if he pulled a Monstars and stole all the talent from him, but he had this year. Cam Newton has a really talented team around him. You can't give the whole idea of like he didn't have a receiver with him because Kelvin Benjamin's back. In his first game, he looked really solid, especially in that red zone grab. So I don't know if you can really give too much. You can't really say too much that Cam Newton. You can't give him too much of a benefit of the doubt.
How scary do you think it was for him seeing 2 Von Millers after he got knocked out cold and just stayed in the game?
That's a conversation for another day.
I suppose
the NFL concussion protocol is a joke. We all know that.
What protocol?
At what protocol? Good point. I mean, keeping on that point with Cam. I mean, he had his moments. Like we saw, MVP Cam. Like I think the Panthers still have a chance to be really good. I mean, the South is really kind of. It's just a jumble at this point. The Bucs, I think, they're not. I think they're a year away from making a lot of noise. The Saints, I think, are on the decline. Today they lost to the Raiders, who we're going to talk about a little more in a bit. Then you have the Falcons, who are the Falcons and not very good. But I think the Panthers. I think they don't control their destiny, but barring a massive collapse, they should win the South.
You agree with that?
I still have some questions out on their secondary after losing Josh Norman. But they have one of the best linebacking cores in all of football, and their front line is insane.
Luke Kuechly and Shaq Thompson, very good.
Thomas Benjamin back on the opposite side of the ball. They're clearly the most talented team. Now that doesn't mean they'll win the division, but
high expectations.
I'd be very surprised if they don't win the division. My disappointment was the Chargers. They blew a 21-3 halftime lead against the Chiefs. Chiefs on paper are a much better team. But a divisional game, week 1, after showing up so well in the first half, 21-3, and then to just blow it all. Like, I'm not that surprised, but I am disappointed because I'm like, oh, maybe the Chargers did figure it out. We were talking about, like, oh, despite the fact that their front office is human garbage, they actually were able to put a winning team on the field today. But then, of course, second half, they give it all away. Chiefs end up winning in overtime.
Yeah, their whole team's looking like they don't really want to be in San Diego anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, would you want to?
Santiago.
A team that does want to be there, though, is the Oakland Raiders. And
Raiders!
We're going to talk about what we learned this week. I think we learned a lot from the Oakland Raiders, didn't we?
Yeah, I think they're for real. They came back, they beat the Saints, and they went for 2 with almost no time left on the clock to take a 35-34 lead.
Can we get, Drew Brees a solid defense?
Yeah,
that guy's played for, the last 6, or however long it's been, 6-7 years since that Super Bowl, without not even close to a top-tier defense.
I feel like his defense keeps, breaking its own record of, terrible
Could they get
stats.
a defense without,
worst yardage of all time, most points given up.
I think it's funny we thought Rob Ryan was the problem, and then we saw today that that was
maybe
not the problem.
not.
I'm just waiting for them to establish a defense that is solid without having to pay players to take out other players.
Oh, God.
Okay, I will say the last thing I expected was Bounty Gate.
That was going to enter today's discussion. But really, they're not in a great division. We were talking about the Chargers. They're not winning that division. Chiefs are, I think, the best team, although the Broncos surprised me against the Panthers. So I think those 3, other than the Chargers, all have a reasonable shot at the division.
With Derek Carr, they might have the best quarterback in that division. They might have the best wide receiver in that division. They have the best defensive player in that division.
I would agree with that. They probably have the best quarterback in the division.
They've got 3 of the best in that division, so that's really looking good forward for them. I still think they're a couple years away. I'm waiting for them to establish that run game a little more. I know Latavius Murray was a Pro Bowl last year, but Teddy Bridgewater was a Pro Bowler last year with 13 touchdown passes. So there's making a Pro Bowl is not that crazy, but still, I think they need another number 2 receiver. I think their secondary still needs some work, even though they got Carl Joseph out of West Virginia, who I think is going to be really, really talented for them.
Well, I just think the biggest thing for me psychologically is that Jack Del Rio decided to go for 2 in that situation. That's not something I think they would have done maybe in the past, where this year they want to pick up that win on the road, a really tough win. Obviously, we'd be calling them really stupid if they didn't end up getting it, or we'd be praising his guts and saying, well, good job at your own one. But I think that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the season where we're playing to win every game. We know that we're talented enough to actually make the playoffs. If not win the division, at least get one of those wild card spots.
Just win, baby. What I learned today is we caught bits and pieces of it on Red Zone. I was really impressed with the Bengals Jets game. In terms of competitiveness, that was probably the best game of the day.
Oh, yeah.
And I would not be surprised if both of those teams end up winning a lot of games this year. I mean, not 12. I'm not Mike Greenberg. I'm not going to say the Jets will go 13-3 because that's ridiculous, especially in a division with the Patriots. But the Jets will probably make the playoffs. And the North, the Bengals have had kind of a firm control over it the past few years. They're going to win it. And is this the year they win a playoff game? I mean, it's week 1. We can't make that argument.
Just can't be going for headshots, buddy.
Can't be doing that.
Can't be going for headshots.
Vontae's perfect jokes. Now we can check that off on the bingo card. Bengals and Jets will be very good this year. I think that game was very competitive and down to the wire. So it was a very good game. AJ Green, being AJ Green, very good. Fitzpatrick, coming right back, didn't miss a beat. So the rest of the season, I think those teams are going to be very good.
Those are two sneaky talent. Oh, not necessarily the Bengals. Everyone knows they're talented, but the Jets are sneaky, really talented. They have Brandon Marshall, Eric Decker, bringing in Matt Forte was huge. They've always had a really solid offensive line. And Fitzy. I mean, I'm not.
Fitzy.
I can't really.
Fitzy.
I don't know what I'm going to get from him on back-to-back years. He had that 1 year with the Bills and signed an insane contract.
And then went to the Texans apparently that we seem to all forget.
Can we also check off CenturyLink being 0 for 4 on our bingo card so far? We lost NFL Red Zone today.
Y'all can't see it right. I'm on the laptop right now. I sent them some information to process 25 minutes ago, and I've still not heard back. So CenturyLink customer support, I'm calling you out.
How much internet speed does one family actually need? Ballpark.
To answer your question, I assembled a similar family unit. My family is using 40 megs, and it works great. With that, you can download an HD movie or TV show in minutes and songs in seconds, which is a good thing because my pretend family is not big on waiting. Hey, are you gonna eat yours?
Meet me in Temecula, one-on-one, on Rust, no snipers.
Including our over 2 on Monopoly, too.
On Monopoly. So,
on Monopoly nights, the Wi-Fi goes
360 no scopes with me, CenturyLink, right now.
Blaze it for Jesus, man.
We bought an entire new router for this house. And that wasn't the problem. CenturyLink, our Wi-Fi still doesn't work. So CenturyLink.
So safe to say CenturyLink will not be advertising with us.
CenturyLink
will not be invited to the company Christmas party.
They're not allowed here. Next is that a Yank as our every week.
CenturyLink
is 100% a Yank.
200.
This week's Yank though is not in the NFL. We're moving back to the NCAA. And it comes down to Charleston Southern's athletic department and football team suspending its players, 32 of them, for buying school supplies with their book money.
Oh, no.
They were given money to buy books.
Imagine what the Tallahassee Police Department would have done with that.
Hell, the Tallahassee Police Department would have given them $1,000 cash.
They were given this money to buy books, and if they didn't buy the books, if they bought all their books already, they would have had some money left over, and the school says, okay, here, use it. You should use it to buy some other things, some other school supplies. Otherwise, the money's basically just going to go to waste. So they do, and then they decide to suspend these players for an NCAA violation.
What is the NCAA doing?
Being the NCAA.
My goodness. So you can't spend money on books. You can't make money from your likeness of being on a team. I mean, Charleston Southern, they're not really going to make that much money from that because they're not a premier program. But come on. It's not like they're going out, they're not Louisville basketball program. That's not where the money's going.
Topical.
So
you can get tattoos and lease cars through the you can get that stuff for free.
Shout out
as long as no one knows.
You can't get pencils.
You can't get pencils.
No pencils or notebooks.
You know what those pencils are going to do? You buy pencils, that means you're not an amateur athlete anymore. That's the rule right there. You know why Terrell Pryor got suspended those couple games? He bought a Ticonderoga pencil. He didn't play those games. It's not tattoos. You go look at the file in the case file, I'm telling you.
And the problem is it was number 2 pencils.
It was number 2 pencils. Pryor probably bought mechanical Johns, those little things. He bought those and showed up to a test. Scantron won't record those. So this is just another case of the NCAA being dumb as hell. Charleston Southern, I will say Charleston Southern, they're a very good team. They took NDSU to the wire in the first week. They're not going to beat Florida State. But it's just a power move by the NCAA. Look, we're in charge. You broke this one little minor rule. Your entire offensive line gets suspended. Good luck trying to keep them protected. I think they ended up losing to FSU by 40 points. But it's just another case of the NCAA being the NCAA.
This is why it's so hard to stand behind what college football stands for. This is why as the kind of years go by, you've got more and more people speaking out against college football and saying that this is just this entity that's in there. All they are is for the money, and they really don't give a darn about the athletes that they throw out there.
But luckily, once they get to the NFL, they care a lot about it.
Yeah.
And the NFL is like a great corporation.
Golly gee, mister, they just don't give a darn about those college athletes. I love college football to death, but, you know, the amateurism aspect of it has become so, you know, overblown, and, you know, people try to defend, I try to defend it, but, you know, it's the fact that these athletes are working day in and day out. They make millions of dollars for the university. They don't see a penny. And then it comes to cases like this with Charleston Southern. It's just ridiculous to a point.
And so you see the headline, you're like, what? And you read the article, and you're like, oh, this has to be like taken out of context.
This
You read
has
it,
to be
you're like,
article.
Sports
all right,
people.
like it's unbelievable. So yes, this I think we're all in agreement. It is a yank.
It is 100% yank. Ding. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will be discussing a little bit more NFL and a little bit of the NCAA. If you want to watch Shouting from the Couch, you can follow us on YouTube, on Facebook at Shouting from the Couch, and on Twitter at SFTC_podcast.
Are we on
We'll be right
Foursquare?
back. Welcome back into Shouting from the Couch. We're joined again by Tyler Murray. Welcome back, Tyler. Just like that.
Mitchell, you
Got a
look
little
great.
dark outside, but you know.
Yeah, only 6 hours later. This segment, we're going to be discussing whether or not, if the Chicago Cubs were somehow, they're not going to, were to win this year's World Series, if it would surpass the Miracle on Ice as greatest moment in sports history within the United States. Now, we have resident Cub homer Jacob Kornhauser here, so
Sporting his
don't take his opinion too,
Put that game
Bears,
away.
yeah. that
and you
game
can't
there.
take my opinion too
Second
much,
half.
too hard either,
Cubs
because I'm
almost
a
scored
St.
as
Louis
much as the
Cardinals
Bears
fan.
did.
So we'll go with
sorry.
we'll go with Tyler Murray and Chris
we talking
Turner.
about?
We have a Cardinals fan, a Cubs fan, so our opinions are going to be
Let's
biased.
hear what, I want to hear what Chris has to say.
Oh, me?
Yes.
But you're the newbie. I defer to you, sir.
No, I need to get up to speed.
Okay, sorry. He's got to warm up,
He needs to
folks.
get his feet
You got
wet.
to warm up the juices. I think it would probably be up there. I mean, probably since it's been almost 100 years, it'd probably be the greatest thing, one of the greatest sports moments. I mean, breaking a curse like that. I mean, I consider the Red Sox winning the World Series in 2004 as one of the greatest moments. You know, breaking
Please
the
don't remind
Bambino
me.
curse.
That was a good series.
No, it was not.
Who did beat that
I
series?
think it was the Cardinals. I think
Cardinals.
it was 4 games.
Johnny-
wait,
like
4
that.
Johnny Damon forever haunts
That's
my
a
night.
sweep.
That's a
That's
sweep.
sweet. Wow.
No,
Wait,
Must
did
be
they do it
nice.
in
Must be nice to
2013
play in the
too?
World Series.
they
Must
did.
That's
That was
incredible.
sweet. At least the Cardinals did show up for 2 of those games.
Good for them.
So that was good to see. But okay, so the Cubs. This has to be attacked in many different ways. Okay, so you can look at it like there's 2 different. So the Miracle on Ice team, the underdog side of things. There's no underdog element of the Cubs. Like whoever they're playing. Let's say the Cubs make it to the World Series and they're playing the Red Sox. They'd be favored. Playing the Blue Jays, they'd be favored. Tigers, favored. Rangers, favored. Like
Typically
they would
how it
be-
works when you have the best record in baseball.
How much of
I
that,
know.
though?
That's what I'm saying.
How much of the historic context of them historically being bad still make them a bit more of an underdog than they would be?
I don't think.
In terms of not
I mean,
like
if you're
this,
40
not
games
like
over
ice
500, I
odds,
don't think you're
but-
considered an underdog.
I just don't think what the Cubs did in 1972 or
Yeah.
65 has any relevance. Like, I
But
get
that is
it's
part
an
of what makes
amazing
it so great,
It's
though.
an amazing story,
It
but
happens.
like whatever the heck Leicester City was like odds
Yeah.
to
A
win
soccer
this year,
team.
Like, not even close.
It like just like triple that. Like there hasn't been a bigger odds since David killed Goliath in the Bible. Like I don't know what the Vegas line on that was.
Bovada
but,
had
like,
Bovada
I think
had David going off at plus 700.
No, it was like plus
Eric took that
8,000. Yeah, probably. But like literally, there's been like nothing can like even be. It's not even fathomable how elite and how above everyone else the Russian national team was versus how horrible the U.S. team was. Like just dreadfully awful. Like you all saw the movie, but like obviously, like
That would be a fun little segment
I was
to do
there
one day.
for it.
Would be historical Bovada
Yeah,
odds,
was
like
in
the
the
Ottoman, the
I was in the crowd.
the Ottoman Empire versus the Brits. Probably the Ottoman Empire going off early favorites minus 150, but I don't know. The Turks are probably gonna slump late though.
and we want to talk about historical context. Let's also talk about how it was like Russia, America, like
Heart of the
Cold
Cold
War,
War.
hot, like heart of the Cold War. Like that was such a symbolic, like way more than hockey that we talked about a little bit off air. But like the beginning of that movie was setting the scene because it wasn't just a hockey game.
Yeah.
It was America versus the Soviet Union. Like this classic
A
good
bunch of
versus
college
evil
players.
under like just underdog story. Like it is the all-time sports.
Unless we forget, Rocky ended the Cold War a few years later by knocking out Ivan Drago in Moscow.
Yes.
It's also up there with like the moon landing in terms of like, which is topical, with like winning the Cold War, like milestones, if you can find them within the entire span of that, like that is one of, if not the biggest moment, and it was a sports moment which you almost never see.
And we were also talking about this, how like looking at that American national team, like seeing where all those guys ended up, like you'll watch the movie at the end of it and it'll be like he's now like a car salesman, like he sells like
he's an assistant coach.
Only
none
a
of them
handful
really
went to the NHL, but none of them stuck. Like Jimmy Craig played for the Bruins and the Thrashers for a little bit, didn't stick in the league more than 5 years. That team was full of nobodies, just nobodies all around, and they beat one of the greatest like international teams ever assembled.
That was really playing with each other for
over
a decade.
Exactly, there's a bunch of 18-year-old kids.
I mean, that's like if
friendship.
I mean, that's like if you find a dynasty in the NHL.
Because we're a family.
But we're a family.
We're family.
That's like if you find a dynasty in the NHL, but there's no like contracts. They're just like on the same team their entire careers, and they get to just blossom and play with each other for that long. Like that's how good they were.
Yeah, and like once the USSR broke up, you had all these really good Russian players, but you had players like Alexander McGillney and Sergei Fedorov that like defected. There's that huge story. It's a really, really incredible story of people that don't know about it. But like literally 2 Hall of Famers, just no one really knew about them. Like McGillney was taken in the 5th round because it was like a foregone conclusion. He was never going to leave the Soviet Union. That was not a concept. And like there was so much talent. Like that guy has 1,200 points in 800 career games. Like incredible talent that was playing. He was just like one of the guys like over in the Soviet Union. Like they had some incredible talent that never reached the NHL. A lot of those guys that would have been Hall of Famers.
Yeah, I do agree that the Cubs, I don't think can get, just because of the historical context, can't quite get to where that United States win was. It'll be the greatest one in our lifetime. But another thing is like almost everyone, like most of the guys on this team, like, which is good for the Cubs, have no really knowledge. Like they know the historic background and stuff, but they're so young. Most of this like
grandfathers weren't even alive.
That like they don't really they can't have that pressure. Yeah, Nick was. Were you at the game?
I was at the game. They won in 1908.
He was a Boston Braves season ticket holder actually for a couple years
back in the day. No, I do think the Chicago Cubs winning the World Series would be good for baseball. Unbiased opinions aside, I would want to be there in Chicago for that moment. Not rooting for the Cubs, of course, but just to be in Chicago, I think would be cool to see that city just erupt. I mean, it would be insane. I don't know how everybody else that's not a Cubs fan would really react if they would. I think real baseball fans would definitely care, and I think
children can see that.
Yeah, I think even Cardinals fans would care as much.
A lot of Chris's named with K. Because we are a dying breed. Chris's with C's. Never forget.
It's sad now that a lot of these players don't have that rivalry like it used to be from the old days with McGuire and Sosa and Derek Lee, Ramos Ramirez. All those older Cardinal and older Cubs players had. It's not the rivalry right now isn't really there just because the Cubs and Cardinals last year, I guess they were both up there as powerhouse teams, 2 of the best in baseball. But I think it'd be certainly good for baseball. But will it surpass the United States? I don't think so. I think just because from the United States, hockey, that's the Olympics, and when you're rooting for a team as an entire nation, everybody's behind that team. It would still be one of the best moments in sports history for sure. But best in sports history, like you said, it's an underdog. That was the story that why United States hockey beating the Russians was so cool because of the Cold War.
The Cubs won't be
underdog. The Cubs are the favorite right now.
They might not be favored like heavily, but like there's no way they're an underdog.
And if they were to reach the World Series, they'll be favored by something, whether it's big or small.
We talk about this Cubs team not really having the historical ability of having a historical context. What if we sent the team over to Aleppo to play a 7-game series with Syria? I mean, that'd be our historical context.
What is Aleppo?
Gary, do you not know what Aleppo is, man?
Politics and sports don't mix.
Aleppo's a AA school, actually. They're coming to play Missouri next year. They got a strong running game.
Would they beat Eastern Michigan?
They would not beat
Eastern Michigan. Would they beat Rhode Island?
They would beat Kansas.
Okay, so they would beat Rhode Island.
Would they rush the field if they beat Kansas?
They could, but they'd probably get,
Well,
with that, hey, and let's not forget, I almost forgot that we are being the United States hockey team for Halloween.
That's true. That's true. I didn't even think about that.
We all ordered our jerseys.
I am a hockey player.
I gotta grow out the hair.
Herb Brooks,
Jim
Craig, Jack O'Callahan, and Mike.
Makes sense.
Maybe we can do a special shot from the couch Halloween edition.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we'll have a special edition next week from New Orleans.
Yep,
so
we will be down in New Orleans next week. We'll be down. I don't know where exactly we're doing that.
We'll do a shot from.
But we'll have some. We'll have a good.
We'll shoot from our razors.
We'll have 2 special
filmed
versions
with my Sony Ericsson.
Shot my chocolate.
We'll have
sent from
one
BlackBerry.
official version down in NOLA next week, and then we'll have an unofficial version as well. So
on Snapchat, maybe
a little bit later.
Stay tuned for that one. Maybe later on in the evening. So that's going to do it for this segment. Coming up next, we will be discussing NCAA, I think, NCAA college football. Yeah. So yeah, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back into Shouting from the Couch. Earlier we were discussing a little about the NFL season. Now we're going to discuss dark horses through week 2 of the NCAA season. So Chris, what are some dark horses you've seen so far through week 2?
Well, I'm not biased or anything when I say this, but I'm very impressed with what Arkansas's been able to do. Say for a week 1, they played very well against TCU to open the year, but they're not my best dark horse. I think you got to look at Oregon. Oregon obviously has Royce Freeman, who's like on his, doesn't get mentioned on a lot of best running back lists, but at 6 foot, 221 pounds. He's one of the best big bruising backs in the front. And they got Dakota Prukop, who is a transfer from Montana State. He's playing very well. Realistically, Oregon for the rest of the time could poach an FCS quarterback from each year and probably be very successful. Mark Helfrich is a very good coach, and he's been able to lead that program to consistent success. I think Oregon will be a team to watch. If they beat Stanford somehow, Stanford I think is still my pick to win the Pac-12 North. If Oregon beats Stanford and wins the Pac-12, I think they have a very good chance to make a dark horse run to the playoff.
See, I actually had Arkansas as well. Yeah, every year they've been a lesser version of Tennessee in the West for me. Of like the last 2-3 years, I've been like, all right, Arkansas got to make their run now. I think I picked them to finish like 3rd in the West last year, and they weren't bad, but they weren't as good as I think a lot of people expected them to be. And this year, so far, again, week 1 didn't look great, but they pulled out a huge win against TCU. When you can win games like that, especially against a ranked team like TCU, like that can kind of catapult you. Now, when you're going back into the SEC West, that catapult might not launch you as far, but they're one of mine. Louisville, I think, as well. They're putting up, 50 points a game. Like, they're not playing premium competition yet, but until you prove that they're not going to be scoring at 40, 50, 60 points a game, I think you have to at least look at them.
And if Lamar Jackson's going to continue to be shades
oh
of
yeah,
pick.
yeah, no kidding. He one of the best, if not the best, probably single game performance we've seen in the first 2 weeks of the season. And this isn't really, I struggle calling this a keeper, but Houston as well. Like, I think they're for real. I guess I would only call it a sleeper because a lot of people, I think, still doubt them and still don't think that they're for real. I think they definitely are.
They still got to beat Houston, or Louisville rather. They got to beat.
Yeah, so
that'll be a late game in November. If they beat, it's the winner of that might end up going to the college football playoff.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to see when we're talking about a lot of these teams, if they're for real or not, if they're a dark horse, if they're a favorite to win, comes back to something that Drew Lock, the Missouri Tigers quarterback, actually said this week after in post game was, if you're not putting up 60 points, then who's going to believe that you're for real? I know a lot of these teams aren't in conference competition yet, but it seems like if any of these teams are playing in close games and they're not the favorite, or if they are the favorite and they win, people expect them to win, but if it's an upset, a close upset like the Arkansas one, people might still be questioning, whether or not they're for real or not.
Well, Georgia moved down 7 spots after beating Troy by 2.
Yeah, or it was a Nickel State.
Nickel State, that's right.
Clemson beat Troy by 6 whole points.
Yeah. If these teams that are expected to beat the lower, FCS teams aren't winning by 50 or 60, then they're going to drop down in the rankings because,
See, I think this is what's indicative of college football. I think more and more now that this whole people trying to say there's this huge disparity between FBS and FCS. That's something that I personally don't necessarily agree with so much anymore. I think a couple years ago, you could easily say that there's a huge disparity between the upper echelon teams and the lower echelon teams. But the more experience, the more I think personally, I've seen a growth in FCS teams and these lower echelon teams really becoming more talented. I think if you look into like community college level, you'll see like a lot of really talented players, and these FCS teams continue being poached by upper echelon teams. But you guys are gonna hate me.
Don't
You
say
guys are really
it.
gonna
Wait.
hate me.
Don't say it.
Using my psychic power. You picked Nebraska, didn't you?
Yeah. My dark horse is gonna be Nebraska. No, I understand. No, I understand. You guys are gonna hate me for this one, but like, as you guys saw in the way that I was reacting to the very first Shouting from the Couch episode, just hear me out for a second.
Didn't we call you out on the very first episode?
Yes, you did. Yeah,
Yep.
Chris gave me a shout. Gave me a hi. I said hi back.
We shouted from the couch to you.
So
Now you're here.
we're coming full circle. So I think the reason why I'm going with Nebraska is because if you look at their team, honestly, they field a top 25 team in terms of talent they have on the roster. They have one of the most deep roster or depth charts in their wide receiver core. They go 3 deep at running back. Trey Bryant, he's a freshman, true freshman that Mizzou really, really wanted to get. Super talented guy.
Oh darn,
But
Mizzou missed
Mizzou
out on
lost
a
him.
recruit. I don't believe it.
What other
Is
recruit
he-
did
he
they
was
miss
in
out
state,
on
wasn't
that's
he?
from
Yeah.
that's going to Nebraska?
Mizzou lost an in-state crew, folks. Can you believe it?
They lost
Javon
someone in their
McQuitty.
backyard. to
Continue like
Nebraska.
Newbie, another really talented running back, and Daniel Zigba has been a really talented guy. But
How do you pronounce that?
it was Zigba.
Zugba.
But where I think it's really going to come ahead is like your sleeper pick, Oregon, and they're playing them in week 3. But if you look at their schedule coming up, they've got Northwestern,
Win.
Illinois,
Win.
Indiana,
Win.
Purdue,
Win.
and then going into Wisconsin, they have a very
I don't know.
good chance of being 6-1 or 7-1
if
going
they-
into Wisconsin. So if you can bring off a win againstWisconsin, you got Ohio State. That's gonna be a
Let's
loss.
say good luck. Also
Minnesota,
making a
Maryland,
championship
and then
game.
Iowa.
I mean,
Like-
safely for the memes, they're going to go 8-4.
I
I mean, Nebraska. I will say they've looked very good the first 2 weeks. I mean, they played Wyoming. Who they played the first week? Fresno.
State.
They did play Fresno. Tommy Armstrong. He's going to end up going down as one of the
That's
better
where it's
quarterbacks to coming through Nebraska.
That's where the whole thing's going to come down is Tommy Armstrong. Just this last week, he broke Nebraska's career record for
200.
passing touchdowns.
200 passing touchdowns.
No, it was 57.
57. Never mind.
57.
It was
just
Eli.
broke-
Eli that had 200.
He just broke T-Mart's RIP passing touchdown record.
R.I.P.
Yeah, RIP.
Did you guys know
He's-
Taylor Martinez died apparently? in
Yeah,
Mitchell's
he,
eyes?
he had a chance at the Eagles, and now he's making phone apps for a living.
Oh my god! You know, I'd love to be making phone apps for a living.
Don't do it.
Who?
Harambe.
Oh
you.
my god!
It's a staple. He's a staple here on our show.
What kind of phone app would Harambe make? Find your kid? It's like find your iPhone. Where's my son? He's in the zoo pen. Oh no! Mitchell has gone full field position. That'll be it for the episode. Thank you for joining us on Shouting from the Couch.